Hello, good day everyone. On behalf of Bero, I would like to welcome you all for today's webinar from Bero Insights. I am Anup Agrawal and will be your moderator for today's webinar. In today's webinar, we'll have our speaker discuss on how 3D printing can potentially benefit MRO supply chain. Before we move ahead with the presentation, I have some general set of instructions for the participants on the call. Please note that all the participants will be placed on mute. During the course of presentation, if you would like to pose any questions, you will find a box on the right hand side indicated in red. Request you to type your questions and hit the send button as and when presentation progresses. I'll note down the high frequency questions and will pose it to the presenter at the end of the session. If you are experiencing any connection issues, request you to close the windows, go back to email and try to connect using the same link. If there are any further problems with regards to webinars such as voice quality or connectivity issues, request you to please email Punit in a given email ID on your screen. You will also find this email ID in the webinar invitation that we have sent across. Moving on, let me quickly introduce the speaker on the call today. I have with me Abhijit. Hi Abhijit.
Hello everyone.
So Abhijit is actually a research expert for CapEx and MRO category at Bero Inc. His category expertise helps him in addressing client-specific market and procurement intelligence queries. He has built extensive knowledge and expertise in the category, which includes capital equipment and filtration consumables. He has been tracking the developments in 3D printing industry as potential disruptive technology from past several months. He has also written multiple thought leadership articles on 3D printing. With this brief introduction, I'll request Abhijit to take this webinar forward.
Thank you, Anup. Hello everyone. Imagine a future in which a device connected to a computer can print a shoe or a medical device as per the end user's specific requirements and measurements. Sounds interesting. But is that really possible? Yes, it is possible through an emerging technology called 3D printing, a process of manufacturing made easy. But what does that mean for a manufacturer? It simply means that a manufacturer can offer a customized solution to the end user without added cost of mold, assembly, and labor involved in manufacturing by conventional manufacturing processes. This will ultimately lead to design and supply chain flexibility for the manufacturer during the early phase of product design as well as during the production. Therefore, to explore this technology and its potential benefits, in today's webinar, we will be covering three key areas with respect to 3D printing. First, why should you use 3D printing? Where I'll be discussing about the potential benefits associated with this technology. Next, we will be looking at when should you use and not use 3D printing, where I will be discussing about the prerequisites and the challenges associated with this technology, and if 3D printing is a solution for your organization and can be adopted. We will look at how can you adopt 3D printing. Here we will look at possible engagement models for adopting 3D printing. Before we move into the webinar, let us take a minute to understand what 3D printing process is. It is the process of creating a product by adding material layer by layer, which is also called additive manufacturing process. Let us understand this process visually. Here you can see a plane with few raw material particles being deposited by a 3D printer. As process of deposition continues, the required amount of raw material is being deposited on each layer. Moving forward with the process, over a period of time, multiple such layers are formed over each other to finally create a product, which in this case is a cylinder. This is what we call a additive manufacturing process. But you would be thinking, how is it different from conventional manufacturing processes which we have today? To give you a brief idea, 95 to 98% of conventional manufacturing processes today involve removal of material from a block to get the desired product, which is also called subtractive manufacturing. To better understand the difference between these two processes, let me take an example of subtractive manufacturing process. As you can see on the screen, we have a metal block which is a primary raw material for a subtractive manufacturing process. As the process of subtractive manufacturing starts, the material is being removed from the block using tools as per the design requirements. As the process of material removal continues till you get the desired shape and size, which in this case is a metal bracket. This clearly shows that compared to subtractive manufacturing, the 3D printing process involves optimum utilization of raw material. Now, to further evaluate this technology for its potential benefits to the buyers, let us look at some of the benefits which are associated with this 3D printing process. One of the major advantage of using 3D printing is reduction of raw material wastage. As we have understood from the previous slides that raw material wastage can be avoided by this process. Raw material wastage savings are substantial compared to subtractive manufacturing process and can be nearly 0%, which basically means no wastage of raw material. Then buyer can also achieve savings on tooling. As we have observed, up to 30% cost reduction is possible on tooling, primarily by eliminating the need for molds and patterns and manufacturing of jigs and fixtures during the production, which basically means patternless production. Moving ahead, another advantage observed of 3D printing is labor cost reduction. By using 3D printing, the buyer can reduce the assembly labor and production labor required for a product. This can help buyer to reduce up to 30% cost in labor. Moving ahead, 3D printing also plays a critical role in the product design phase. It makes the process much simpler and faster for a complex product as well. This benefit can help buyer achieve up to 30% cost reduction in prototyping without any added cost for the complexity of the product involved. Last but not the least, 3D printing can also reduce the lead time up to 97% due to saving on time during the tooling process, the assembly and the prototyping phase, which will ultimately reduce the total cycle time. Having looked at all the benefits associated with 3D printing, you would be wondering, wow, the benefits seem to be good. Yes, the benefits are revolutionary indeed. But the next logical question is, can everyone shift to 3D printing? Well, in subsequent slides, I will help you to understand if a 3D printing can be adopted by an organization and when can you really consider investing into 3D printing. You can consider 3D printing if you have high design complexity involved, which means intricate shapes and designs which cannot be manufactured using conventional process of manufacturing. For example, a complex component of a jet engine wherein design precision is high can be prototyped as well as manufactured within short time through 3D printing. Moving ahead, you can consider 3D printing if you have requirement for small lot production, which basically means just-in-time requirements. Consider an example of a replacement part for an OEM capital equipment. The requirement of a spare part during the maintenance cycle is very important to reduce the downtime during maintenance. Therefore, in-house in-house production of a part through 3D printing can help in reducing the downtime as well as the cost associated with sourcing a particular product. Moving ahead, you can consider 3D printing if you need a shorter product development cycle in response to changing market demands. For example, consider a consumer goods company which requires frequent design iterations for a product to be performed within a short time in response to changing preferences of the end user. 3D printing as a technology can play a very important role in reducing the time to market for such kind of products. And finally, you can consider 3D printing if you have requirement for providing customized products to your end user. Here we can consider an example of a contract manufacturer of a spare part who can adopt 3D printing to provide a customized spare parts as per the requirement of the buyer during a maintenance or repair cycle, which will reduce the lead time as well as the inventory cost involved in storing the product. Having identified the different requirements which can be met by 3D printing, it is important to know how 3D printing fits into your business objective. As you can see on the screen, we have y-axis with focus on product change marked from low to high, and on x-axis we have speed to market marked from low to high as per different end user requirements. The graph has been divided into two sections to depict two different set of organizations. The first section has company A, which represents the organizations with low focus on product change and speed to market. And in second section we have company B, which represents organizations with high focus on product change and speed to market. Let us look at how company A can leverage the 3D printing technology to achieve its business objective. 3D printing can help company A to save raw material by avoiding the wastage during production. Company A can reduce or improve the product development cycle by rapid prototyping. 3D printing can supplement the existing capability in a bias organization, for example, by manufacturing molds for injection molding machines. And finally, it can reduce the downtime by reducing the changeover time for the tools during production. Now moving to company B. The primary focus of these organizations is on product differentiation through customization and faster response to market demand. Let us look at how company B can leverage 3D printing to meet its strategic objectives. Company A, Company B can achieve the business objective by having high design flexibility associated with 3D printing, which basically means freedom to change the design and produce a functional prototype for testing within short period of time. Second, company B can achieve product complexity during the design phase without any added cost, which basically means complexity without any added cost, and complex and robust product designs can be easily prototyped and manufactured using 3D printing. Company B can also be benefited by better proximity to the demand market, which in turn will make impact on speed to market and faster time to market, which will provide company B with a first mover's advantage in the market. To summarize this slide, 3D printing can be adopted by different end user industries to meet their specific objectives. Having said that, let us look at some of the challenges associated with this technology. One of the major challenges associated with 3D printing is raw material or the feedstock cost, which is currently high. This is due to the fact that manufacturer has the complete control over the raw material to be used for 3D printing, and the manufacturer of 3D printers charge a premium for processing the raw material to make it ready for 3D printing. And moving to the next key challenge, which is high cost of 3D printers. The cost for 3D printers is high currently and can range from $50,000 to $200,000. This is basically due to the consolidated supplier base of 3D printing manufacturers and the patented technologies involved for building a 3D printer. But according to our observation and study, the prices of 3D printers are expected to come down in the future as the adoption of 3D printing increases in the market. And the third challenge which we'll be discussing today is slow 3D printing speed compared to conventional manufacturing process. Speed of 3D printing is one of the major concerns currently. However, latest technologies like high-speed sintering will improve the 3D printing process in future. These three challenges are bound to reduce as 3D printing is widely adopted by different end user industries. Now that we have seen the current challenges of adopting 3D printing, it is important to understand that to justify the adoption of 3D printing, the buyer should first identify the application of 3D printing in your organization. So what is the important question here to be asked? What do you need it for? 3D printing can be adopted by an organization during an initial phase for rapid prototyping as well as for the final production by rapid manufacturing process. This is important because the kind of 3D printer which is required for prototyping and manufacturing differ in terms of the initial investment and the raw material consumed. Moving ahead, it is important to identify the right technology for 3D printing based on the printing speed and accuracy offered by the technology, the resolution, which basically means the finish which can be achieved by a particular technology, and finally the raw material properties required for your specific products. And if you have identified the application in your organization and have identified the right technology for 3D printing, the next step is to identify the right engagement model to be adopted. So moving ahead, let us look at what are the possible engagement models for adopting 3D printing. We have the first model, which is in-house model. This model involves the buyer to purchase a suitable 3D printer as per his requirement from a supplier, then installing it in his design or production location as per his requirement, and finally creating the product design or prototype by sending the digital files to the printer from a design software. Buyers should consider in-house model when their product requires constant and frequent design iterations and product design is confidential and cannot be shared with a third-party service provider. To summarize this slide, this model is apt for high-value and patented products. Now moving to the second model which we have is outsourced model. This model involves outsourcing the 3D printing process to a third-party service provider. The process starts with identifying the right service provider based on technology, geographical presence of the supplier, and the price charged by the supplier. The process next involves sending your design to the supplier from remote location, and finally the supplier creating a 3D printed product for the buyer. Buyers should consider outsourced model when they want to adopt a decentralized manufacturing model and their requirement involves variety of raw materials for 3D printing and for their products, because as we understand, different 3D printing technologies use different raw material. Therefore, it is important to understand the kind of raw material and product which has to be 3D printed. To summarize this slide, this model is apt for low value and highly customized requirements. Now that we have discussed about the benefits and the adoption model of 3D printing, let us look at some of the real-time examples in industry where 3D printing has successfully made an impact. The first example we can see on the screen is from pump manufacturing. Here, a new impeller was designed using 3D printing with the help of a supplier called X1, which is one of the major suppliers of 3D printers in the market. Through 3D printing, the pump manufacturer reduced the prototyping cost by 90% and was able to reduce the lead time to 4 weeks from 6 to 12 weeks earlier, which was quite a substantial amount of saving on cost and time. Moving ahead with our second example is from MRO consumables industry, where a filter has been designed and manufactured using a 3D printing technology called laser sintering. Here, a supplier called Crop Filter had manufactured a filter using 3D printing. The supplier called Crop Filter was able to provide a customized filter to his client as per his requirement and successfully reduced the product development cycle time by 50%. And finally, the last example which we will be considering is from personal care industry, where a supplier called Tamicare has manufactured a personal care hygiene product using a patented 3D printing technology, and Tamicare successfully reduced the raw material usage by 50% and has completely eliminated the assembly cost involved in manufacturing of personal care hygiene products, which was quite amazing. Here we have seen some of the real-time examples of 3D printing to achieve the specific objective of the buyers and the suppliers. Now, to recap what we have discussed, let us look at the roadmap for adopting 3D printing. First step is to identify if and where 3D printing can fit into your organization. So it is important to understand what kind of products and what kind of process should be selected so that 3D printing can be used, which can be for prototyping or for rapid manufacturing as per the requirement. Next step is to estimate the potential savings which can be achieved by reducing the raw material utilization, by eliminating the tooling cost, by reducing the assembly cost and the prototyping cost. And third important step is to identify the right engagement model suitable for your organization based on the parameters like the cost of 3D printer and the expertise available with the buyer. And the final step is to identify the right technology and supplier for 3D printing. This was the overview for adoption of this emerging technology called 3D printing. Thank you.
Well, this wraps up the presentation for the session. Thank you, Abhijit. Thank you very much for a very insightful session here. It's time to take some high frequency questions from our participants on the webinar. For our participants, let me reiterate again. If you wish to post a question, you will find a box on the right hand side of your screen. Request you to type your questions there and hit a send button. I'll note down your question and post it to our expert research Abhijit on the call. So Abhijit, one of our questions that I can see from many of our attendees is about supplier of 3D printers. Our participants would like to know what are the parameters they should really consider when it comes to identifying the right supplier of 3D printers.
Okay. To identify the suppliers for 3D printers, there are basically three key parameters which a buyer should look into. The first parameter is to understand the technology offered by the 3D printer provider. Currently in the market, there are three key technologies. First one, the fused deposition modeling. Second, the selective laser sintering, and the polyjet technology by Stratus. These are the key technologies which are widely adopted in the industry as of today. So it is important to understand that which technology is important for the buyer as per his product requirements based on the raw material and the print speed, the print volume, and the resolution required. Second important thing to look into is the variety of raw materials offered by the manufacturer, which becomes quite important in this case, because as I have mentioned in my webinar, that the raw material required for 3D printing is currently supplied by the manufacturer. So it is important to understand the material properties of the product and the capability of the technology to utilize 3D printing. And finally, some of the key parameters or technical parameters like the print speed, the build volume, and the resolution, which will finally give you a complete idea as to which supply to approach based on your specific requirement and budget.
Well, thanks, Abhijit. I hope that answers the question of our participants. Another question that I'm getting here, Abhijit, is regarding the challenges associated with engaging service from 3D printing, such as high capital equipment costs and slow printing speeds. That's something that we have discussed in the course of our presentation. So our participants would like to know, how is the 3D printing industry addressing these challenges going forward?
Okay. Well, 3D printing as a technology has come a long way from its initial phase where it was only used by hobbyists for small products. But with advancement in technology and material science, the applications for 3D printing has increased, and these applications range from high value critical engine parts to smartphone components for consumer goods. But the important point with respect to these two challenges, as I have been tracking this industry, expiry of the patents for two technologies like FDM and laser centering in 2009 and 2014 respectively was a very important phase for 3D printing industry, because from that period of time the prices for 3D printing have started decreasing due to expiry of the patents, and in future you can see number of suppliers adopting this technology to manufacture a 3D printer and offer these services to a buyer. And with respect to the slow printing speed, let me tell you that there's a latest development in the technology, and this technology is called high speed sintering, which is currently in progress and is in its pilot phase, wherein the printing speed would be considerably high, and which will lead to development of faster machines in the market in future. So I think the cost as well as the slow printing speed will be taken care of in the future as the applications increase and the technology improves.
Thank you, Abhijit. Well, another question from one of our participants is, how can adopting outsourced models for printing help me in decentralizing the manufacturing, and what are the potential benefits of it?
Okay. As we have seen in the webinar that outsourcing model can provide an opportunity for decentralized manufacturing. So this basically means localized production of the required product as per the demand in proximity to the manufacturing or end users market. So this basically means shortening the supply chain and localize the production. For example, 3D printing a part by a contract manufacturer in the demand location can substantially reduce the cost and time in prototyping, transportation, and inventory management cost, which is involved in a longer supply chain today. So this also can take care of manufacturing in case of supply chain disruptions, as we have seen in case of Toyota. So these are the potential benefits and through which a decentralized manufacturing model can be adopted by buyers to cater to the demand market faster and in a less expensive way.
Okay. Well, I can see another question popped up here. Let me open it. All right. So, Abhijit, one of our participants would like to know who are the top manufacturers or suppliers of 3D printers in the market, and how is the supplier market in terms of consolidation?
Okay. Well, the current market for 3D printers is approximately $3 billion, and which is expected to reach around 6 billion by 2018 as per the industry reports from Moeller Associates, with a CAGR of close to 30 to 32%, which is quite high. So moving forward, the key or the main top suppliers as of today are Stratus, 3D Systems, and X1. These are the three key suppliers in the market with dominant market share globally. And the supplier market is expected to consolidate as there are a number of merger and acquisition activity in the industry, with 3D Systems, which is one of the main and key supplier of 3D printers in the industry, acquiring close to 43 companies in past 5 years. But with increasing demand and the patent expiry of key technologies will lead to development of new suppliers. And give an example, UPS, which is a third-party logistics provider, has set up a pilot project to offer 3D printing services in North America to the clients. So over a period of time, we are expecting a more fragmented market as the technology matures and the patents expire in 2014.
All right. Well, thank you very much for a detailed answer, Abhijit. So with this, I think we have kind of covered all the set of questions that we had so far from our participants. For the participants on the call, if you have any more questions or if you would like to know any more insights about the 3D printing, please feel free to drop an email to Punit on the email address that we have shared with the webinar invite. With this, we'll wrap up the session for today. Thank you very much for joining our call, and hopefully the session was helpful for you all. Thank you. Have a nice day. Take care.